Hey, what's good, y'all? Many of you probably know who this is. That's Earthling Ed, or as what I like to call vegan teacher Sidekick. He is well known on the internet for his calm approach to vegan activism, his relaxing, sympathetic demeanor.
Who said is a particularly prone to spreading this narcissistic, self-righteous, and egotistical drivel.
Many of you probably already seen it, so you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you can always go watch some of my other videos on this dude. Today we're going to be talking specifically about a post he made on his Substack where he went to some sort of non-vegan restaurant, which again, as a vegan activist, I don't know why you would go to a non-vegan restaurant, but I digress. That's not what we're talking about here. He went to this restaurant and he asked if there were any vegan options for him. There was like pastries and stuff. And they told him, nope, everything here is butterlicious. And that triggered him. That sent him. That made him crash out. I guess crash in, because it was more of like an internal crash out, if you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, you'll see what I mean shortly. But yes, this little interaction, this little fumble of the words here in the presence of an almighty vegan god was absolutely disarming to him. How could he have such disrespect in front of a vegan paragon like Earthling Ed? Well, let's go have a look at this extremely hostile, insensitive interaction, bigoted interaction, honestly. So Earthling Cringe here writes, I didn't expect this to upset me like it did. I know it's gonna seem like a serious, heinous crime against him when it really wasn't, but I'll let you be the judge of that. I try my best to not allow comments to get under my skin, which, considering my line of work, is something I have had plenty of opportunities to practice over the years. However, recently a comment made its way through my unusually impenetrable comment-proof vest. Let me give you some backstory. I'm a huge fan of sandwiches. Also, keep that comment-proof vest comment in mind. We're gonna think about that again a little bit. I used to enjoy them before I was vegan, and now, as a vegan, nothing has changed. I'm also not fussy. It doesn't have to be artisanal bread made to a centuries-old recipe with the filling consisting of the finest ingredients. Oh, well, that comes off as a surprise to me. I thought you would accept nothing but the absolute greatest the world has to offer, Your Highness. It's quite a relief to see you so humbled. If it's a sandwich and plant-based, there's a good chance I'm going to be on board. With this in mind, it will probably come as no surprise to read that when I hear about well-reviewed places that offer plant-based sandwiches, my curiosity is naturally piqued. This was what happened when I came across a location that would eventually become the scene of the comment that made its way under my skin. I came across a place online that had great reviews and offered options for vegans. As a result, I decided to visit for lunch one day. When I arrived, the place was packed, and I had to queue for a long time before being served. It was when I made it to the counter that I received the quip in question. I ordered the sandwich I wanted, and upon seeing the baked goods on display at the counter, I also asked if they had any pastries that were suitable for vegans. Laughing as he said it, the server replied, nope. Everything here is butterlicious. Immediately, I could feel the annoyance bubbling up inside of me. I responded by saying, I just wanted the sandwich, before paying and leaving as soon as I could. How dare he speak to His Highness this way? Butterlicious? You insensitive, big, dumb oaf. Did you leave your brain at home that day? Because it definitely wasn't present during this interaction, asshole. But why did this upset His Highness? I hear worse things on an almost daily basis in terms of the severity, intention, and overall comment itself. It really wasn't that big a deal, or even close to the kinds of comments I've heard before. One of the reasons for my annoyance was myself. I felt annoyed for not responding with anything meaningful or even witty. That's all right, Vegan Jesus. That would have been beneath you to stoop to his level. Remember, never stoop to somebody's level that is beneath yours, because then they'll beat you with experience. Haven't you heard that before? It's a real thing. You probably saved yourself the dignity and humiliation by not stooping to his level, so good on you. Something that would have effectively expressed my feelings without causing an argument. As a result, I felt disappointed in myself for not being sharper in responding. Calling the pastries butterlicious annoyed me, as it implied that delicious and butter are inseparable, and that these products are delicious because they contain the congealed secretions of a cow. As someone who has eaten many delicious plant-based pastries. This is completely untrue. And I've eaten countless pastries that you would never know were vegan if you hadn't been told. Uh-oh, you see, he's crashing out, guys. Like, I wasn't joking. This man's crashing out internally here. I was annoyed with the way he said it, laughing and smug, with a thinly veiled sense of pride about them being filled with dairy and contempt for the idea that they would serve anything that wasn't. This sounds like a villain origin story, like no cap right now. Like, this sounds like Earthling Ed, the supervillain's origin story right now. Like, he's about to go terrorize Gotham or some shit. Although perhaps this was unfair of me. Maybe I felt upset and then misinterpreted his intention and tone as a means of trying to validate my feelings and emotions. Attempting to unpack and disentangle an experience can be challenging. Sometimes we can feel a certain way, but then trying to understand why can lead us to not always being so definitively sure of the reasons. There's absolutely every chance that a server said what he said not to try and upset me or prove a point, but because he was trying to be funny and witty. He had, after all, taken my order of a plant-based sandwich without any kind of problem at all. Why would he then decide to make a point about the pastries? Maybe it was because he wasn't trying to make a point at all. Like you said, he was just making a joke. It's really not that deep, brother. I don't know how you have this victim complex to such a degree that somebody saying a simple word is butterlicious sent you spiraling, absolutely spiraling over that comment. I mean, I thought you said you had like a comment-proof vest. Really? If all it takes is a word like butterlicious to send your ass into a scorched earth mental frenzy, then I don't think that comment-proof vest is working as intended or even close. It is clearly malfunctioned and it's time to get a goddamn new one. This then leads me to the real reason why I think this upsets me. It's not because I didn't have a quick response to say back to him. And I don't believe he was deliberately trying to upset me or thinks food is only delicious if it contains animal products. I think the reason it upsets me is because even though I had asked for the vegan option, it never even occurred to him that I would be upset about his butterlicious comments. There was no part of him that considered that I might be ordering the plant-based option because I care about animals and think that animal products are unethical. As such, there's no part of him that considered that saying butterlicious would be a bad comment for him to make. You know vegetarians exist? You know there's people that just like don't like to eat meat? Did you know that there's people that just sometimes just prefer the vegetarian option? Myself, my wife included. Sometimes you just don't feel like having meat that day. Maybe it's like, you know what? A nice veggie sandwich sounds good. Doesn't mean you're vegan at all. Expecting somebody to jump to that conclusion, be like, oh yes, I forgot. His Highness here must be one of those vegans. He must really care about animals. I better be very careful about how I navigate the rest of this conversation. God forbid I upset him or I say something insensitive and bigoted toward his superior ideology, his superior lifestyle. Something that I myself, of course, could never comprehend. That's ridiculous and unbelievably childish and silly, brother. Come on. In the server's mind, dairy is such a non-issue, especially from an ethical perspective, that he didn't even consider for a second that his comment could be perceived as making light of the abuse and exploitation dairy cows face for us to make butterlicious pastries. This comment was upsetting because it reveals a complete lack of care or even awareness around what happens to dairy cows and their calves, their exploitation again overlooked and ignored. I was upset because his comment was invalidating of my veganism, because it potentially revealed something more generally about people's ignorance around animal exploitation. I can handle comments from farmers and meat eaters because I can understand the intention and the motivation behind those comments. In this case, I don't believe there was a bad intention, and that's why it upset me in the way it did. It was just a flippant, offhand remark, most likely intended to be comical rather than hurtful. But the seeming lack of comprehension around why someone would not want to eat dairy left me feeling upset, because it removed any notion of animal exploitation from the conversation and entirely invalidated the animals' experiences of suffering and harm, which, in this case, was being inflicted upon them in the name of pastries that can taste just as delicious without dairy. You know, first off, Big Cheese, let me just say, now that I think about it, I'm actually a perfect example of somebody that might have ordered the exact same thing as you, because I'm lactose intolerant. Oh, something you didn't consider as well. Perhaps I wasn't feeling meat that day, and I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't want your dairy, I don't want cheese. So I could have ordered the exact same thing as him, and I'm not a fucking vegan. Brother, again, it's not that deep. If it was clearly the case that he was trying to be unkind and had a bee in his bonnet when it came to veganism, in a way, it would be easier to process, because the comment would be a simple reflection of the type of person he is, a not very nice one. While I might have still been upset, I could have at least rationalized it in a simple way that made him the problem. However, in the more ambiguous situation I found myself in, the server in question represented a larger, more inherent problem. People still don't view the issue of animal exploitation seriously enough, and butter is not viewed as a product of suffering, but something delicious and desirable. Rather than his comments being a reflection of the fact that he wasn't a particularly nice person, it was instead a potentially more complex reflection of a broader societal issue, one that I, and vegans more generally, have to deal with every day: ignorance and apathy. As vegans, it can sometimes be surprising what upsets us. Meat eaters presume that sending us a picture of meat or telling us they're eating twice as much meat now because of us is going to be upsetting. However, these comments are as boring and predictable as they are weak and desperate. I think what this experience led me to realize is that often what upsets me are those moments where I realize just how little the issue of animal exploitation is thought of. For me, it's an issue I think about every day. For many, it's not an issue have even properly considered at all. You can send me photos of me, but what really upsets me is when people are so unaware, they don't even stop to consider why meat would be upsetting in the first place. As for the sandwich, well, to be honest, I was very underwhelmed. The filling wasn't even distributed, and the flavor wasn't anywhere near good enough to get rid of the bad taste that had been left in my mouth. Yeah, I know you weren't expecting the Earthling Ed impression for the rest of this. Probably should have done it for the whole thing, but I feel like it would have gotten old really fast, so I decided to save it for the end. Yeah, I can do a killer impression of this fucking guy. But no, he sounds exactly like that. Like, I mean that. Seriously. But I've honestly pretty much already said everything I wanted to, made fun of this dude a lot. This is something to make fun of. Like, I do not give a fuck how you feel about this. This is something to make fun of. To cry about somebody saying butterlicious, to write an entire Substack page article dedicated to somebody saying butterlicious is crazy work. That is crazy work. I'm a writer myself, actually. You see, I write interesting fiction stories. You can't really see it because it's blurred, but this is The Elevator Man by me, and you can buy it on Amazon. Don't buy Earthling Ed's books, they're trash. This man, literally, I make fun of him because he literally is about, like, you know, reducing animal suffering and everything. That's his, you know, what he hides behind, that's his veil. When in reality, he's probably the most self-absorbed and moral superiority out of every, like, vegan I've seen on the internet. Because this guy has books dedicated to arguing with carnivore or carnists, people that eat meat. He literally has a book that's like how to argue with a meat eater and win every time. I'm like, dude, I thought the purpose of veganism was reducing animal suffering, not arguing with people that don't agree with you. Those are two very different things. See, one of them is in the moral superiority camp, arguing with people because you need the validation of beating somebody in an argument because, you know, you're so self-absorbed and narcissistic. And the other camp is just trying to reduce animal suffering, which doesn't involve arguing with people, because arguing with people isn't going to get you anywhere. How many times does somebody argue with a non-vegan and then they turn into a vegan? That is so unbelievably improbable. And the truth of the matter is, most people, when they're just being berated and called an animal abuser and a murderer, will just turn you off and not listen to a word you have to say. Even if you came at them with compelling arguments, in one ear, out the other. That doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work. So you wrote a whole book of shit that doesn't work for the sake of boosting your own ego and the egos of other moral superiority junkies in the vegan community. Good shit, brother. See you later.